So I am sitting in Melbourne, Australia with my good friend and all around misinformation guy from the University of Melbourne, Dr. John Cook, and we are going to talk about Cranky Uncle. Hey John,
Hey Melanie.
how you doing?
Pretty good.
Nice t-shirt.
Yep, I got this from a friend. It's a very... Everyone should be wearing one.
I agree. Yes. So what is it? What is Cranky Uncle?
So Cranky Uncle is, firstly, the character Cranky Uncle is that character that we all have in our lives, usually in our family, someone who's usually older, male, who thinks that they know better than all the world's scientific experts, and they're not afraid to share their opinion. When I talk to people all around the world about Cranky Uncle, they all instantly get, yep, I have a Cranky Uncle in my life. And my work has been focused on how do you help people make sense of the different arguments that Cranky Uncle uses against the scientific consensus, against science and evidence. And it's about developing tools and books and games that can help people make sense of Cranky Uncle's arguments and fallacies.
I do anecdotally know this to be true that every time I use Cranky Uncle in class, and I use it every semester, it's a wonderful game, my students always immediately get the Cranky Uncle character.
Yeah, I mean, I have several uncles and fathers and father-in-laws, all matching that kind of personality.
So you're not going after Cranky Uncle. You're not trying to change Cranky Uncle's mind. You're trying to help other people understand the arguments that Cranky Uncle is using so that they don't get fooled by them.
Yeah, so my target audience generally isn't Cranky Uncles because they tend to be very difficult to change their minds, as we would all know from experience. And also they distrust science, they distrust evidence. So trying to persuade them with evidence usually is fruitless. So instead, the work I do with Cranky Uncle, the Cranky Uncle game, book, and other work is about helping basically the other 90% of the population who aren't dismissive about science to understand their arguments and really be able to pick the fallacies and rhetorical techniques they're using so that they're less likely to be misled.
So what are the most common or most effective arguments that Cranky Uncle uses, and why are they misleading?
My view on this, and we're trying to do research now to kind of lock this down, like actually show it with data, but I would say that the most persuasive or effective arguments are ones that involve people, social arguments, such as appealing to fake experts or ad hominem attacks against experts, the actual experts, or conspiracy theories casting doubt on science and scientific experts.
So the original Cranky Uncle, I can see actually you've got your book here, which is an excellent book, but it focused on climate change. You have a new version of the game out, or you're working on a new version?
Yeah, well, it is out in some parts of the world. So we started working with UNICEF and the Sabin Vaccine Institute over a year ago now, working on a Cranky Uncle vaccine game, which basically focuses on the top 10 fallacies or tricks used in vaccine misinformation. And Cranky Uncle explains how he uses these tricks to mislead people, and a health worker explains what the actual facts about vaccines are.
And what are the most common arguments? And I guess how do they match up with the ones that a climate change denier might use?
The number one fallacy on our list was appeal to nature, which we called natural is best in the game. So just a bit more plain language version of it. And that's usually arguing that natural remedies are more effective or the only remedy people should be using rather than scientifically developed medicines.
What I think is fascinating about that, because I want to hear more, but the disease is natural.
That's one variation of it, which is you should get infected by the disease to build up natural immunity rather than getting vaccinations. So that's one flavor of natural is best, but other versions are using ancient remedies that have been used for thousands of years because and again that has a bit of an appeal to tradition as well, and that and the argument is that we should be using those traditional natural remedies rather than using modern scientific developed medicines.
Yeah, it's just such an interesting argument because in order to accept that, a lot of people die from some of these diseases. And so you have to overlook the negative effects of the disease to accept the natural argument.
Yeah, there's a lot of... You find that all these techniques often cluster. So if you're going to appeal to nature, you also have to cherry pick and ignore all the deaths that happen and ignore all the benefits that come from vaccines, for instance, and all the lives that are saved. So we find that there's a lot of clustering. So the second most common technique amongst vaccine misinformation was anecdotal arguments, or we call it personal stories in the game. And you find that personal stories often are combined with appeal to emotion. So it's giving you really heart-tugging stories about how somebody got vaccinated and then afterwards they suffered some kind of sickness and therefore the vaccine must have caused it, which again is another fallacy, which is, well, the Latin term is post hoc ergo propter hoc.
Rolls right off the tongue.
But we call it false cause.
Yeah.
And so you have these clusters of personal story with false cause, with appeal to emotion, and then they can be quite persuasive.
So I, as someone who does a lot of work around pseudoscience communication and trying to help people not fall for pseudoscience, those techniques match up almost exactly with my experience. So pseudoscientific remedies are often all natural and used for centuries by millions of people. And there's this story of someone who tried it and they felt better, or they noticed they got the vaccine and then they got sick. And then there's some person in a lab coat who says, well, I endorse this product or remedy. And underlying all of that is the conspiracy. Because what I find is in order for basically all of the world's experts to disagree with your position, it almost by definition has to involve some sort of conspiracy. So I guess I don't really have a question in there, but do you have any comment on that?
Conspiracy is one of our techniques in the Cranky Uncle vaccine game, because yes, if you are going to deny the scientific consensus, it's inevitable that there's going to be conspiracy. So that was one of our top 10 lists. And then, and again, conspiracy theory usually also is accompanied by evil intent, which is assuming that the people who are involved in this conspiracy, they're not doing it for good reasons. They're either trying to control the population or kill the population or do some evil plan in secret. And then again, you have ad hominem or personal attacks often wrapped up in there as well, because the scientists must be having evil motives, or the pharmaceutical companies or governments or scientific institutions. And so conspiracy theory is always going to come up when you're dealing with science denial. Yeah,
and that evil intent, because the result of that often is that the person, I'm thinking of a few in particular, try not to name names, but who are the experiencing the brunt of those attacks actually are trying to do good things. They're trying to fund research that helps people, trying to communicate a message so that people can get good science and make good decisions. And these conspiracy theories, they're fueled by people who are wanting to spread disinformation to their own ends. And then the victims of that turn their ire onto the people who are actually trying to do good and accuse them of trying to do evil. Again, I don't have a question. Do you have any comment?
Well, the big irony is they're accusing the people who are trying to save lives of these evil plans. Meanwhile, often the people who are peddling the misinformation are profiting from it, like whether it's profiting from alternative health remedies, or in the case of climate change, fossil fuel companies are the richest companies in human history, and yet they think that scientists are trying to make money from this. So there's a big irony in all these personal attacks and conspiracy theories directed towards science, when actually there's plenty of other dodgy behavior going on.
Yeah, and science is global too. Like the supposed motives for a scientist in the United States, I mean, why would that apply to a scientist in Sweden or in Australia? So I just find that really inconsistent. The other thing with my students is, so I find that a lot of them believe the conspiracy that the FDA in particular, or pharmaceutical companies, are hiding a natural cure for cancer. And when you ask students, how many of you have been touched by cancer, right? And almost all of them have. Okay, how much money would it take for you to be silent about finding a cure for cancer, right? And especially considering the fame and fortune you would actually get by announcing to the world that I have discovered a natural cure for cancer. So it's like most conspiracies, once you start to pull at the string, it falls apart. But it's really effective.
That applies to every conspiracy theory too, whether it's climate change or hiding a cure for cancer or using vaccines to control the population. All it will take is one whistleblower in the global community of people within this conspiracy, and that would reveal the secret. And yet there are no whistleblowers. And the bigger the conspiracy too, the more implausible it is that you would actually be able to keep the scheme secret.
Is it that Ben Franklin quote, 3 people can keep a secret if 2 of them are dead? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've had my students play the original Cranky, the climate change version, and it's awesome, and they have a great time doing it, and fallacies are pretty challenging to learn, and it's a fun way for them to learn the fallacies. But your vaccine game is different, and it's like a different audience and so on. So if you could just tell me a bit about it.
Yeah, so the big difference between the original Cranky Uncle game, or we call it Cranky Uncle Classic now, and the Cranky Uncle vaccine game is that Cranky Uncle Classic was just focused on technique-based explanations, just explaining the techniques used in misinformation. Cranky Uncle Vaccine explains the techniques, but on top of that, it also explains the facts about vaccines. So it's fact-based and technique-based. So you have Cranky Uncle explaining how he misleads and distorts the facts. But then you have the health worker explaining, well, here are the vaccine facts. Because it was really important, like UNICEF stressed from the start that they wanted players to learn facts about vaccines as well as be inoculated against the misinformation. And it's an important thing, because when you are trying to build public resilience against misinformation with interventions like a game or communication or whatever you're doing, you not only want to see people's vulnerability to misinformation go down, you also want to see their acceptance of facts go up. So you don't want to make them cynical about everything. Otherwise, if their belief in facts are going down at the same time that their belief in fallacies are going down, then you're just breeding cynicism. Better, you want to improve their discernment, their ability to distinguish between facts and misinformation.
So this game you're working with UNICEF, and where is it targeting?
So the way we're doing it is we're targeting specific countries around the world, but if you're going to do that, you need the game to be co-designed in that country for that country. So it's not just done by outsiders, it needs to be culturally relevant and look like the people who are playing the game. So we've gone into a bunch of countries now and done co-design workshops where they helped us design the characters and also went through all the content and helped us to make sure that the content was culturally relevant to them. We've done co-design workshops in Uganda, Kenya, Rwanda, Ghana, Pakistan. And we've also, once we finished the game, co-designed it and developed it, we ran pilot studies in Uganda, Kenya, and Ghana. And we're about to do Rwanda and Pakistan in think Rwanda actually starts next week.
And what have you found?
So we found exactly what we were hoping. Like, actually, this is funny because, like scientists, we run experiments and you hope to see an effect, but if you don't see an effect, and sometimes you don't, you just think, oh, well, there was no effect, and you move on to the next experiment. In this case, there was a lot of, we were going to all these countries, co-designing, a lot of effort, and I was getting more and more nervous as we were coming up to the pilot, just sweating on, I hope to see an effect.
Please.
And so we were very gratified and relieved to find that, yes, people's believing fallacies went down from before the game to after the game. So the game helped them identify fallacies, but also their agreement with vaccine facts also went up. So we got that discernment effect. But we also asked them a couple of questions about their vaccine attitudes, like how important did they think vaccines were, and most importantly, did they intend to get vaccinated or get their family vaccinated? And we saw that both of those went up as well. And
Damn, that's awesome.
And intent to vaccinate is one of the hardest like measures or attitudes to actually shift in an intervention like that. So we were pretty excited to see those results.
So I very selfishly wish that my students could play this game, or I could recommend it to maybe Americans or someone. If anybody wanted to play that game, would they be able to? And if so, how?
So if people go to crankyunclevaccine.org, there are 3 versions of the game there. So on the homepage, you'll see a button. The iPhone version, the Android version, and the browser version. Anywhere in the world can play the browser version now. The iPhone and Android version are only available in the app stores in the specific countries: Kenya, Uganda, Ghana, and I think Tanzania, and maybe Rwanda. I think those are the countries. Maybe Pakistan, I'm not sure. It's very shifting. It changes from week to week at the moment as we're gradually rolling out in more countries. So everyone in the world can play the browser version, but when you start the game, you do have to select a zone or a country. And I think the only versions live right now are English versions and maybe French and Kenya, Rwanda. But you would have to choose Ghana English or Uganda English or just these different versions. And as you choose different countries, you'll see a different version of Cranky Uncle. So there's the clean-shaven Cranky Uncle from East Africa, or the Cranky Uncle from West Africa or Ghana has a really colourful shirt. It's actually kind of our favourite outfit. And then the Tanzania version, he has a full beard. So I'm a big fan of facial hair on cartoon characters. So the Pakistan version has just a mustache. So he's, I'm not sure if he's available yet, but if you choose the English version, but then choose a country, you'll get to see the different uncles. And all the other characters as well are different.
Those countries have incredible diversity. So to be on the ground like that in those places and try to come up with something that's culturally relevant for the majority of people there must have been really challenging.
Yeah, we did. Historically, what we did was we started in Uganda, and then a week later we did Kenya, and then a week later we did Rwanda. So the process was, I drew all these little sketches of all the different characters in the game, including like 3 or so different uncle variations. Some of them wearing modern clothes, some wearing more traditional clothes. So just giving them lots of options to look at. And then at the co-design workshops, all the participants will just put little sticky notes and write their feedback on what they did like or they didn't like, or what they should be added. And they voted on each uncle. So it was kind of like a game show, like, who wants to be a cranky uncle? And it's narrowing down which was the most relevant cranky uncle. And we did this in the 3 countries and just basically took all of the 3 countries' workshops feedback on board and created a set of characters and then sent them back. And we found that for these 3 East African countries, all very close to each other, this one set of characters was appropriate. So thankfully for us, we were able to use that one cast of characters for the 3 different countries.
I'm in my head trying to figure out if you did something like that in the US to try to come up with a cranky uncle character. My guess is, at least in the Cranky Uncles that I know look an awful lot like your actual Cranky Uncle from the original. But what do you think?
Probably, like, there's that actor, I forget his name now, with the mustache and a really deep voice, who I thought would play a great American Cranky Uncle. Yeah, I think so, but it would be an interesting experiment. Maybe we'll get the chance to do it.
My students always have lots of opinions about it because they all seem to know who it is. So yeah, if you ever decide to do that, I'm going to offer them as guinea pigs once again. Was there anything I haven't asked you about?
The one thing I'll say is the interesting thing with East Africa was once we got all that feedback, all the reams of comments from the workshop participants were then given to Wendy Cook, who's the graphic designer who creates all the characters in the game and did all the graphic design. And then she had to create the actual final colored designs. And it was uncanny because once she'd taken their feedback and did exactly what they were instructing, she looked at the final design of the Cranky Uncle character for East Africa and said, my dad dresses exactly like that.
That's funny. Actually, I'm very familiar with Wendy's work, Wendy Cook's work, because she also designed my adorable Thinking is Power logos.
Yeah.
Which I couldn't love more. So, does great work. Anything else?
That's it, I think.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time. And everybody play Cranky Uncle and buy the book. And
one more thing.
Yes.
So there's crankyunclevaccine.org. And then the original Cranky is at crankyuncle.com.
And that's available on the App Store.
For everyone globally, yes. Yeah. There's just the one white mustache version of Cranky Uncle in the original classic game.
Awesome. Well, thank you.